All right, there we are. We are live. We are live. Well, hello. Welcome to another Wednesday at the Well. We are very excited. Things have been really fun this month, and we are very honored to have our clinical director here today, Dr. Danita Hudson. So welcome to those of you who are in our Zoom room, who are on our list and have the ability to get up close and personal with us. And welcome to everyone who was on the live stream or watching the recording on Facebook. My name is Kavalyn Day, and I am the Director of Operations here at the Well. And we have had a fun time this month sharing just some of the behind the scenes about mental health, just kind of breaking it down piece by piece. As you know, if you've been watching these over this past month, the Well Counseling and Consulting Group is the premier provider of mental health, personal, and professional development here in the Indianapolis area. And we specialize in minority mental health. So the information we're going to go through today is all for informational purposes. It is not the substitute for becoming a client at our office if you want to have that support. But if you or someone you love is in crisis, we always recommend 911 or 988, which is available. So we just want to make sure that we drop that at the top of this call, but we are obviously more than happy to take you and be support to you at the Well. I'll make sure that our number and our contact information is around this video wherever you are watching it. But you are welcome to give us a call or email our organization so that we can help you with the support that you need. So today's topic is one that I think a lot of people will be interested in, and I am continuing to check my email because people are responding to my message and dropping their questions, so we will get to those today. The topic today is loving someone with anxiety or depression. So Dr. Hudson, first of all, go ahead and introduce yourself, and I'll make sure that I'm checking these chats so we can jump into these questions real quick.
Okay, wonderful. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Dr. Danita Hudson, and as Kavalyn had said, I am serving in the role of clinical director for the Well. Just to give you a little bit about my background, I have been a therapist for well over 20 years now. I currently also teach clinical mental health students on the practice of clinical mental health. I've been doing that for a little bit over 15 years now. And I currently work in an online clinical mental health program through the College of William and Mary, which is on the East Coast. So I serve in several roles, wear several hats, and anxiety and depression is something that I have been knowledgeable about for many, many years and have studied extensively as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so I told you we are very blessed to have her here today, and that's why. Okay, so depression and anxiety are probably the two most common concerns that people come to our office with, and this might be whether they're individuals looking for help themselves, parents looking for help for their children, or even organizations, that we might work with on our corporate consulting side. So we're going to talk about some of the most common questions that we get, a few that have come in this morning in response to our emails and text messages that went out this week as well. But if you have a question, if you're in our Zoom room, you are welcome to raise your hand if you don't mind being recorded and having your voice be heard, or you are welcome to put it in the chat. I will be checking the comments on our live stream as well. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about why this is a topic that's so important. So first of all, anxiety disorder is considered the most common in mental health concern in the United States of America. Over 40 million people in this country have an anxiety disorder. So that is about 19%. So if you think about it, that's at least 1 in 6 point something people, right? So if you have a large family and there's, 60 people, cousins, extended family, and your family members, that means there's probably 10 people in your family that have an anxiety disorder, right? Now, that doesn't mean that they all have the diagnosis, that they are on medication for it, but that means that they are struggling with those symptoms. So you might be loving someone who has that. When we talk about depression, that's about 21 million US adults. So that's about 8.4% of the population. And that means they had at least one episode. And I think we might need to talk about the episodes when we talk about depression, because it's something that you can come into it and kind of be struggling with it. And it comes like an episodic fashion. So 1 in 6 Americans will experience depression at some point across their lifespan. So this is not a matter of there's only a few of us. This is really a very common concern. So it's not at all unusual that you might have someone in your family right now that you know and love who is struggling with anxiety or depression. So Dr. Hudson, what are some of the things that we would be looking for, signs, symptoms, behaviors, things that they might be saying that might say to us, hey, I think there's something going on, or hey, there might be a problem here? What would we be looking for?
Yeah. So there's several things that that really kind of let you know that your anxiety is getting to a place where it may not be manageable. First of all, some anxiety, as we all know, is helpful. Some anxiety is not bad. It's when that anxiety begins to make life a little bit more difficult for you, when it starts impacting specific areas of your life where you may need to get help for your anxiety. So if you are a little anxious about flying, that's not something that is unusual. Many people get anxious when they're getting on a plane. But when that anxiety keeps you from flying to see loved ones or being able to do your job at work, then that's when you need to get some help for the anxiety. So just understanding that there's levels that you want to consider when you're looking at symptoms. Okay, so what do those symptoms look like? For most people, anxiety affects sleep. And the same with depression. You will find that either you can't sleep, that in those times where you are wanting to fall to sleep, you continue to stay awoke. Or you may find that you fall asleep, but then you wake up in the middle of the night and you start to have racing thoughts and you can't go back to sleep. For many people, anxiety can be associated with digestive issues. So you may have a hard time, either you have acid reflux or you are unable to eat. Some of those things are related to anxiety for most people. Kevin, you froze for a moment. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Yeah, I did freeze. I heard you say a couple points that I want to kind of circle back to, because I want to make sure in case other people froze too.
Okay.
Not all anxiety is bad. That's one key point there.
Yes.
Number one. Number two, the things that you might start to look for is like having your sleep disrupted, having your digestion disrupted, those kind of things. So like your physical body showing the signs of anxiety is one of those things that might be mentioned. So those are kind of, I'm sure I missed a little something in there, but those are the 2 points that I did hear for sure.
Yeah. So, and some people don't know this, but even your temperature changes with anxiety. So those people that find that, sometimes you're cold, there's things that we can use, like they're called BioDots. You can buy them on Amazon. They're pretty cheap. You get them for $100. They're just little dots that take your skin temperature to help you to recognize what your stress level looks like. And so if your body tends to run cold, sometimes that's related to anxiety. Whereas when we tend to be warmer, we're in more of a relaxed state. So just simple things like that could really say to you whether your anxiety is something that's not being managed, whether it's something that's really difficult. Other things, a lot of times anxiety can look like withdrawal. So you're not wanting to do social activities. You're not wanting to spend time with friends or family because it's a lot of work for you to do that. And so many people manage their anxiety by withdrawing from social situations, situations where they could connect. They choose to isolate. So those are other things. And then things that in our community, in the African-American community, that we find, irritability is a sign of anxiety. That's a big sign. Many people, we just say, oh, she or he has an attitude today. And really what they may be experiencing is heightened anxiety that they just haven't managed or controlled.
That is such a good point. And it's one of the points that, when I'm coaching parents, it's one of the things that I talk about a lot, because yes, teenagers can be moody.
Right.
But sometimes those moods are really more of an anxiety or depression issue, that is not necessarily just their hormonal, sleep deprived things. It really is something, an underlying cause. So you see the spectrum of things, you start to kind of think like, wow, is this anxiety? What's going on? And you start to have that heightened awareness. So
Mhm.
one of the questions people ask is, can you fix or can you cure anxiety or depression? Like, do these things go away? Do you just have them forever? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, we don't necessarily look at it in terms of curing. We look at it in terms of managing and controlling. Because again, you're not going to get rid of all anxiety. It's a biological mechanism that helps keep us safe. So the idea of ridding yourself of anxiety would not necessarily be to your benefit. But what you want to do is have more control over your response to certain things that make you anxious. And that comes through practice of
Mhm.
meditation, practice of creating harmony in your life, not necessarily balance. We all struggle with balance, but we want harmony. And what harmony means is that there's going to be times where we have to put most of our attention maybe to work or to school, and we're not going to have a lot of time for family. But what we learn to do is that, okay, we'll do that for a little while and then we'll come back. And then we'll spend more time doing those things that we love and enjoy. That's harmony. And so finding ways to create an harmonious environment for you is one way that you can truly manage your anxiety.
Oh, I love that. So I'm going to use that word. I'm stealing it right now. Harmony, right? And I
Right.
think you make a really good point, because when we start to say, like, does it need treatment? Because everybody who has anxiety is not in active therapy for their entire life, right? That's important. It's going to go through phases. So sometimes you need to be seen weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, sometimes monthly or periodically. Sometimes you can go, hey, I haven't had to see my therapist in a few months. I'm good, right? But it is about, how is your life harmonizing? If
Mm-hmm.
you're saying, like, I'm really not able to go for it, like I have this desire for more, but I can't do it, or the thing that is really going to allow me to get to this place in my career or this place with this relationship, I'm too anxious to do that. That's a really good sign that something
Yes.
is going on. So and I'm thinking again for parents, because that's what I talk to most of the time, or teachers really too. When you
Right.
say, why won't they do their homework? Why won't he complete his college application? Why won't he, do the job application? Why won't he go and do these things? It's not necessarily all the time that they're just lazy or unmotivated. It
Absolutely.
really can have some other causes behind it. So I think those are
Yeah.
really good points.
Yes.
Now, one question we sometimes get is, are you born with anxiety and depression? Can you develop it at an older age? Like, where does this come from?
Okay. So yes, you can be born with anxiety. And that means that it's genetics, right? That if you have anxious, well, it's a combination of genetics and the environment. Usually if you have anxious parents, or if you can look back and see that, your grandparents were really anxious, then that tends to mean that you will have more, you'll lean more to being anxious yourself. Okay. However, it doesn't mean that that creates anxiety. If you have parents who are anxious, but they've learned tools and ways of managing their anxiety, then they're more likely to teach you some of those tools as well. And then you'll less likely be anxious yourself. However, for most people, we don't recognize it as anxiety, especially in the African American community. We recognize it as trying to create that sense of balance in our life, that we are trying to get through whatever challenges before us, whatever hump has come, in the midst of us, being calm and cool and collective, we have the stressor. And then we're trying to figure out how to manage that stressor. And a lot of times we do that through either avoiding it or facing it head on. And then when we do that, it creates maybe some anxiety for those that are around us. Okay. Anxiety because it's not being addressed. Anxiety because the way that we're addressing it head on, straightforward, working our way through it, may be anxious for other people around you, including your children, including loved ones. And so it creates an anxious moment for everyone.
Such a good point. And that's really why we chose this topic, right? Which is loving someone with anxiety or depression, because we want you to understand that there's things that you as a loved one can do to support that person, but it's also necessary to understand that this can impact you, your
Absolutely.
quality of life, the way you're functioning. If you have a highly anxious child or a highly anxious parent, you in that space, and sometimes you have both and you're in the middle, you
Yep.
need support, even though you technically don't have a diagnosis of anxiety or depression. So I think that's really, really important.
Yeah. And even with couples, it can create a lot of conflict in relationships when someone is anxious, because many times we want to control someone else's emotional state to control our own.
Mm,
And it's honestly, it's just not going to work. We
no.
can't do that. But we try because we figure if we can help them to control themselves, then it will create an environment that's better for us. When in all reality, usually if we do a good job controlling our emotional state, just as anxiety can be picked up by those around you, it can also be helped by you controlling who you are and what you're doing as well.
Absolutely. When I'm talking to teachers, I talk about co-regulation.
Yes,
Regulate yourself
exactly.
first, then you can help your little friend who's having a meltdown in the corner. Until
Absolutely.
you're regulated first. Absolutely. So what do you do if you have a loved one who either doesn't want therapy? And the question we had that came in from, one of our members of our community is, what if they maybe want help, but they're financially not in a position to get it? What are some of the suggestions you would have if a person's like resistant to therapy and you think that they maybe have some needs there?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me answer that in two parts. First of all, if you think a loved one or someone that you care for, a friend, needs counseling, the best thing you can do is to talk to them about what counseling is, if you know, or suggest they talk to someone about what counseling is. A lot of times people are resistant because they don't necessarily understand the process, that they don't understand the benefit. Most of us feel like, and again, speaking directly to the African American community, that we can handle it because our lives, for most of our lives, from generation to generation, we have been taught that we can handle whatever comes our way. Just push through. Okay, it'll get better. Those are things that we say to ourselves, which creates an environment of more anxiety, because if you doesn't get better, then you feel like you're doing something wrong. If you can't push through, then it feels as if you're weak. And so really trying to create an environment where there's not that pressure to do it on their own, and maybe even talking to them about how you might not have been able to do something on your own, can be an encouragement. Sometimes when you are really direct with people who might need therapy and you say, you need therapy, you need some counseling, what you're doing instead is turning them away from what could be helpful. Usually what helps is to talk about how it may have helped you, how someone else you knew got better. Your interactions with a counselor or therapist. Those are things that tend to help people to begin to look at the profession, the experience a little bit different.
Awesome. So I wrote down be direct, but I think the key here is how you're being direct, right?
Yes.
When you have a person who's maybe resistant to it or they're opposed to it, you might be direct in disclosing what you have done or what you have seen or the research that you have done, those kind of things, as opposed to something that might feel accusatory or, a judgmental, right? So if you're going to be direct, make sure you're doing it in the way that you're sharing from your heart.
Right. Just like with anything, like, if there's something positive that happens, Kevin, if you have this great meal at a restaurant, what you do to have other people try it is you talk about how great that meal was for you.
Absolutely.
People are more likely to go in and try it because now they have someone who they know who's experienced something positive from the experience itself. The same with therapy, although I know that sometimes we don't like to disclose those very personal things that we do, but really it can help someone seek it, just knowing that someone they admire, someone they love, someone that has been supportive in their lives has done it, and it'll encourage them to do it as well.
Absolutely. And this is one of the things that I think I love about being at our office is that our people they talk to each other. We get very often those word of mouth referrals. My sister told me, my friends told me, my fans told me, we get that a lot. And so I think that is one of those things those are the kind of conversations you need to have around the dinner table. Those are the conversations you have when you're sitting around the cookout. We're getting ready to go into cookout season. Have those conversations the same way you would about whoever did your hair or what have you.
Absolutely.
Have those conversations in the same kind of open and clear ways. I think that is really important.
Yeah, and you don't have to tell your whole story. You can just say how something has benefited and helped you.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes people can see when you're different, when they start to notice like, oh, have you lost weight? What's going on? You seem like you're in a better place. If you know that part of that is because you've made the decision to take better care of your mental health, talk about that. I think that's a really good point. So if I'm at home and I have a child or maybe a spouse that's been diagnosed with anxiety or depression, is there things that I can do to support them while they're having therapy or while they're doing their work?
Yes, there's a lot of things that you can do to support them. Usually what I suggest is that you talk to them about what coping strategies they're talking to their therapist about. A lot of times when we're in that anxious state, when we're panicking, we can't remember what tools we have. Okay, so you can do that for them. You can help them with that. You can remind them. So if they've learned techniques with deep breathing or meditation techniques, practice it with them. Do it with them so that if they're in those moments and you can see that something's happening, that their demeanor's changing, their personality's changing, that they're appearing more anxious, they're not taking deep breaths. Those are all signs that you can see. Then you can begin that process and ask them to do it with you. Or you can remind them, one of the things that you said to me helped when you've been anxious in the past is this. What if you try that now?
Right. Perfect. Perfect. And I think, again, when we're talking about whether it be a spouse or child, and especially, I'm going to even talk to parents of adult children. Sometimes there are things that they have recognized are an anxiety trigger for them. When you recognize what is a trigger for them, you make the conscious effort to not have that be a part of your normal life, right? So if I recognize that, let's say my kids not being able to get a hold of me during the day is a trigger for them, right? And I know I'm going to be locked in a meeting for several hours, I'm going to say, hey, between 10 and 12, mommy can't answer your call. So if you text me during that time, I'm not going to text you back until 2 o'clock or what have you, right? Because you want to make sure that once they've identified a trigger, that you show, hey, I hear you. I care about what you're saying and how this makes you feel. I can't fix everything and I can't control everything, but here's what I can do on my side of the table to make sure that I'm not adding to what you're dealing with.
Yeah, that's a very good idea in helping with regulation, helping them to prepare for those moments where anxiety is going to be something that they're going to have to manage. Because for them, it may feel like it's all of a sudden, but in all honesty, similar to the situation that you just gave, that's not the case.
Right.
What do you do if you're not able to reach me? And as a loved one, yes, you can help them with those moments of, I recognize this would be an anxious moment for my child or my spouse or my partner or friend. So here's how I'm going to handle it. But there's going to be times where you're not going to even be able to do that. They need to have a plan in place. Absolutely. And so even talking about how are you going to handle that could be very beneficial to a loved one.
Yeah. And when we think about, as we're going into kind of our final questions here, are there things that we talk about some of the things we should do? Are there things we should avoid or try to avoid doing, particularly with anxiety or depression, if we know that is what our loved one is dealing with?
Yeah. So, Kevlin, I'm going to go back to what you were saying about co-regulation, because I really do think this is huge when it comes to loved ones with anxiety or depression. Because first of all, there's two things that happen when you love someone. You want to fix it, right? So you have someone who's anxious, then you're telling them, here, you need to do this. You need to do this. Here's what you want to do. I know exactly what you need to do to fix it. That makes people more anxious at times. Okay. And sometimes not everything that we know to do works. And so we have to be in a place where we're open to hear and understand what they're experiencing in the moment. Yeah. So as a loved one, what I want to do is, if my child is anxious or my partner is anxious, what are you experiencing? Do you recognize what the trigger is? What are some of the tools that you can use? So really being curious about the anxiety versus being reactive to the anxiety can be very, very helpful when you're dealing with someone that you love. And most of the time we're reactive. We want to fix it right away. We want to make it better. And sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes the anxiety is going to sit with the person for a little while. And what we want to do is just to be open to, this is their experience. What can we do to make this experiencing more calming? You could do things without even talking to them, like turning on some calming music. Mm-hmm. You can do things with like monitoring with kids, like what they're watching, that might be anxiety provoking, or, like what kind of I don't know, music they're listening to.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
can do things like, just lighting a candle, something that invites peace and calmness into the environment to help them to be able to regulate a little bit better.
Awesome, awesome.
Yeah.
And speaking specifically about depression, so let's say someone's in an episode of depression. Is there something that I should be doing more of, or is there things that I should maybe try to avoid? Because I think a lot of times we get calls from parents, especially of their adult children, where they're like, I think my child is depressed, but they're an
Mhm.
adult and they don't know exactly how to navigate that. So what suggestions would you give on that?
Yeah. So there's a couple things I'm thinking of. One is just being present. Okay. Like a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with adult children, they may not want to tell their parents the story. They know their parents are worried about them, so they may not give them all of the information. Sometimes just being present, checking in on them, telling them about like things that are going great in your life. Things like not necessarily making it all about them, because when someone's depressed, they don't want it all about them. They don't want you to focus on their depression. Sometimes it's just helpful to be in a space where you talk about good things. You share with them maybe a funny movie they watched. I tell people all the time that simple things like laughter, your brain doesn't know the difference between a real laugh and a fake laugh. And so just being, and this might sound silly to some of you, but you should try it. Just being with someone who's depressed and say, hey, let's laugh together. We don't have to laugh about anything that's actually funny. Let's just laugh. Can bring about a difference for them because it's putting them in a different mindset. That's helpful. Encouraging them to get exercise, to eat healthy. And then I also want to encourage loved ones, because this is something that we tend to be afraid of, is asking them about suicidality. You want to ask. It is not going to make someone think about suicide because you're asking. And what we found in research is those that have been more suicidal, family tend not to ask them. And
Mhm.
so asking can be the difference in saving someone's life. So just even taking the time to just ask the questions can be really important to managing and helping with depression.
Oh, so many good nuggets there. One of the things that I heard you say is you don't really have to fix it. You just want to be present. So this is not,
Yes,
you do not have, we are not telling you because you have a loved one with a mental health diagnosis that you have to become a therapist. You can
absolutely.
read the books, but you don't have to read them all, right? And you don't necessarily have to come to therapy with them. Your presence, your awareness, those support of those basic features, like, hey, I'm just bringing you a meal today. You can eat it or you
Exactly.
right? I'm just going to put some clean towels here for you. I'm just going to grab your laundry for you. Those kind of things really are a support to someone who's in a depression episode, and it doesn't necessarily fix it, but it just shows that presence, which is really a powerful thing. I think sometimes when we love someone, you've said this a couple times, you want to fix it, you want it to be gone, you're looking for that magic wand. That's not how depression is. It doesn't, your effort can be a step in the right direction, but it doesn't erase what they're going through in that moment. And that is a really, really hard thing to feel, right? It's a very hard thing to feel. So that's why it's so important for you as the loved one to make sure you're prioritizing your own well-being as well.
Which could be therapy, which
Mhm.
could be getting
Absolutely.
counseling for yourself,
Yeah.
because a lot of times that helps you to manage and deal with the emotions that come up when you're helping, loving, or serving someone who is experiencing emotional or mental health disorders.
Mhm.
Taking care of you sometimes is the best gift that you can give them.
100%, 100%. So as we get ready to wrap up today, I always want to make sure that people know our office is here for you or your loved one.
Yes.
If finances are a challenge, we definitely understand that. We do have people in our office who are accepting Open Path, which makes your sessions as low as $40 a piece. We have partnered with local organizations, local nonprofits, that sometimes we have the ability to offer a scholarship for some of your session or for a number of sessions. Most of your employers will have EAP programs or some type of employee assistance program. We have partnered with some organizations where we provide that as a resource for them. And you can also check with your insurance. I've talked to people who have really great insurance plans where they have no copay and no deductible and didn't know about it. So that's also an option as well. Occasionally though, support groups, we occasionally will run support groups and workshops. The cost of those is usually a fraction of a counseling session, and you'll get some really great tools that you can apply in your own life. So when you come to a workshop or a support group of some sort, you're not necessarily getting one-on-one therapy, but you get that information, those tools, those practices that you can take back home. And usually that's in a much, much smaller financial investment. So those are the kind of things that you can definitely do if there's ever a financial concern. And in any event, call us, let us know. We will happily give you any of the guidance and direction. Our admin team will do that to give you any guidance or direction we can to make the most of the resources that you do have, whether we are the best place for you or not. I refer people all the time if we're not the best place for them because we're not in network with their insurance. We are happy to pass you along to the place that we think will be the best fit for you because we want you to get the support that you need. And help is available. I know there's a lot of talk right now about wait lists and it's so hard to get in. There are places that have wait lists and it can be challenging sometimes to get in, but there are still resources available. So please don't let the news make you think there's not help available, because there really is.
Yes.
Dr. Hudson, as we wrap up, any final thoughts you want to share about loving someone with anxiety or depression, or anything related to making the most of your mental health, which is what we try to do here at The Well?
Yeah. Yes. I just want you to know that there are a ton of resources online on coping strategies. There's simple things that you can do, just like some deep breathing. Usually what you want to do is practice some of these in moments where you're not highly anxious, or you're not having those low episodes of depression. And the reason for that is because it's really about training your mind to think differently, right? And so practice is how we do that. It's the idea that, how you get hungry around the same time every day because your body has been trained. The same with using coping strategies. You have to practice them when you're feeling well, so they'll work when you're not. And so little things that you can use, there's things called like 4-square breathing. That's one thing that I teach, which is just, you're going to imagine a square, and with your finger, you're going to draw your square out, and you're going to breathe. This helps your mind to focus so that the anxiety is then coming down because you're focused on your breath. It's not wondering why you're trying to breathe. So things like starting at a point, counting, taking a deep breath at one point, letting it release at another, deep breath, letting it release at another, going down, doing the same thing until you create a square. And again, that helps your mind to focus. So you're not just breathing, you're also not thinking about those things that keep you anxious. You're focusing on your breath only. There's other things like there's something called the 3-3-3 rule, which is just has you looking around the room, 3 things that you can name, or 3 things that you see, 3 things that are positive in the room, like the light, something that for you, the color, something that for you brings you to a happy pace. Again, it helps you to focus your mind so your anxious thoughts are not running away with you.
Awesome. Awesome. I love those practical strategies that you can use that do not require you having access to a therapist, any money, or any tools, really, any specific item. Because sometimes you'll find yourself feeling anxious in a space and you're like, I don't have this, I don't have that, I don't have anything that I can use right there. So I think that's really, really important. Well, we are so excited that you have joined us. Once again, we have one more of these Wednesdays at The Well for the month of April. The month is almost over. Next week is going to be me and Sierra Jackson, and we will be talking about divorce and co-parenting and how that can affect your mental health. So we would love to have you come back next Wednesday again at 12 noon for that. Thank you so much, Dr. Hudson, for joining us. And we look forward to serving you at The Well.